The unexpected arrival. The galaxy had been quiet for centuries. Aliens from many different worlds lived peacefully, exchanging knowledge and resources. They had studied countless species, but one world, Earth, had always been of great interest. However, they never imagined that something from Earth would ever reach them in such a way. It all started one quiet evening. The stars shone brightly, and the vast emptiness of space seemed as peaceful as ever. But then something unusual appeared on their radar. A small, blinking dot slowly grew larger and larger. The ship was unlike anything they had seen before. Its shape was simple yet sleek, with strange markings glowing on its hull. The aliens called it a warship, but even that word didn't seem to fully explain what they were seeing. The ship didn't sneak into their galaxy. It made its presence known from the moment it entered the atmosphere. It was a sudden burst of energy, a force that cut through the silence of space. The alien council quickly gathered to analyze the unknown object. "Is it a threat?" one of the leaders asked. The fear in their voice was evident. "We don't know yet," another replied, scanning the ship's energy readings. "It's not like any other warship we've ever encountered." The ship was coming closer, slowly and steadily. It wasn't in a hurry, almost as if the crew on board knew they couldn't be stopped. The aliens didn't know what to make of it. Were these humans from Earth just exploring the galaxy? Or had they arrived for a more dangerous reason? The warship's technology was advanced, but it was nothing like the usual alien ships the Council had seen before. There were no visible weapons or engines that could be easily identified. The design was simple, but its structure suggested power, something beyond what the aliens had anticipated. Even worse, the energy levels coming from the ship were unlike anything in their database. "What kind of technology do they have?" one of the aliens asked, nervous. "We've never seen anything like this," came the reply. "It's beyond anything we've studied. The energy signatures, they're fluctuating in ways we can't explain." They had encountered many species and many warships, but nothing that seemed to defy all known laws of science. The ship wasn't just advanced. It was powerful, and the closer it got, the more uncertain the aliens became. Something about the human warship felt wrong. The idea that these humans had managed to build such a ship sent a chill through the entire council. They had always thought of Earth as a primitive planet. How could such a small world produce something so terrifying? The alien leaders decided to take action. "We must investigate. It could be dangerous, but if we don't understand what they have, we risk being caught off guard," one of them suggested. "Agreed," another leader said. "Prepare our scouts. We need to know everything about this ship." The scouts were dispatched immediately. They were trained to infiltrate and gather data from any unknown vessel, but they had never faced something like this. The scouts approached the warship cautiously, trying to remain unseen. But there was something about the ship that made it almost impossible to avoid being detected. The ship seemed to radiate a kind of energy that could be felt even from a distance. "Something's not right," one of the scouts muttered, looking at the energy field surrounding the warship. "It's like it's aware of us." The warship didn't seem to make any move to avoid the scouts. Instead, it continued on its course, slowly moving closer. The scouts tried to send messages to the alien leaders, but the signals were jammed. They couldn't get through. Every time they tried, the signal was cut off by an invisible barrier. Whatever technology this ship had, it was far more advanced than anything the aliens had ever seen. "Do we attack?" one of the scouts asked. "No," came the response. "We need to learn more. Attacking might make things worse. For now, observe." The scout fleet continued to follow the warship, trying to keep their distance. The tension in their minds grew as they watched the ship draw closer to their home systems. What would happen when it arrived? Would the humans simply land and demand to speak with them? Or was this the beginning of something far more dangerous? The leader of the alien council gathered them all for a final decision. "We cannot wait any longer. We must know who is on this ship and what they want. The entire galaxy could be at risk if they're hostile." A plan was quickly formed. They would send a signal to the ship, attempting to communicate with the humans. But they were careful with their approach, knowing that any wrong move could cause the humans to retaliate. "Prepare the transmission," the leader ordered. "Let's see if we can speak with them." The transmission was sent, and the council waited, in silence. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours as they awaited a response. And then, the screen flickered to life. A human face appeared on the screen. It was calm, with a slight smile, as if they had expected this moment all along. "Greetings," the human said, his voice clear and firm. "We come in peace, but if you attack us, you'll regret it." The aliens were left stunned. Peaceful, yet threatening. How could this be? Were these humans peaceful explorers? Or was there something far more dangerous at play? The warship had arrived. And now, the galaxy would learn just how terrifying humanity could be. The power of humanity. The alien council remained silent after the humans' words echoed through their communication screens. "We come in peace, but if you attack us, you'll regret it." The calmness in the human's voice sent a shiver down the spines of the most hardened warriors. It was a message that was both simple and threatening, wrapped in an air of confidence that the aliens couldn't fully understand. For the first time in centuries, the council felt truly uncertain. These humans, what kind of species were they? Everything about the warship suggested a deadly power that the aliens had never encountered before. The power to obliterate fleets, the ability to jump across galaxies in an instant, and a single ship that could hold off entire civilizations. The presence of the warship itself was unsettling. But the humans on board? They were something else entirely. "What do we do now?" A trembling voice broke through the tension in the room. One of the younger members of the council spoke, unable to mask the fear in their tone. "They've warned us, and their words were chilling." The leader of the council, the eldest and wisest among them, took a long, deep breath. His eyes narrowed, studying the screen that showed the calm human face. He had seen wars, conflict, and strife all across the galaxy, but this situation was different. These humans weren't like any species he had encountered before. "Send a scout ship," the leader ordered. "But don't approach too closely. I want to learn more about this human force. We cannot afford to underestimate them." The scout ships were launched, sleek vessels that could remain hidden in the vastness of space. Their mission was simple: observe the human warship from a safe distance, gather data, and report back. The council hoped that this would provide them with some clarity about the humans' capabilities and intentions. As the scouts approached the human warship, they couldn't help but notice something strange. The closer they got, the stronger the warship's energy pulse became. It was as though the ship was pulling them in, drawing them closer with an invisible force. The alien scouts tried to maintain their distance, but the more they tried to back away, the more the warship seemed to draw them in. It was a force unlike anything they had experienced. "Turn around," one of the scouts said urgently. "This doesn't feel right." But it was too late. The warship had already locked onto them. In an instant, a beam of light shot from the warship and struck the scout ship. The scout vessel's system short-circuited, and the entire ship shook violently. The aliens tried to regain control, but the ship's engine failed. With no way to escape, the scout ship was pulled toward the warship. The alien fleet watched in horror as the scout ship disappeared into the massive ship's shadow. Then, just as quickly as the ship had been pulled in, a signal crackled through the comms. It was the scout captain, barely able to speak. They let us go," the captain gasped, his voice filled with disbelief. But the ship, it's alive. It's more than just metal. It's something different." The aliens listened in stunned silence. What did that mean? The ship was alive? They had never encountered a living warship before, let alone one so powerful. "What did they do to you?" the leader demanded, his voice sharp. "It's hard to explain," the captain continued, his voice shaky. "We approached, and then it wasn't just a ship. It felt aware, like it was reading us, understanding us. It knew we weren't a threat. I think it could have destroyed us in an instant, but it didn't. It just let us go. The Alien Council exchanged uneasy glances. If this was true, it meant the humans had more control over their technology than anyone had realized. The warship wasn't just a tool. It was an extension of their will, and it could decide who lived and who died with a thought. What are they capable of? One of the council members asked, his voice filled with awe and fear. The leader paused, his expression grim. We need to find out. We need to know more about these humans. If their technology is alive, if they can control it like this, we are dealing with a species that we can't predict. We have to understand them before it's too late. But just as they began to form a plan, the human warship made another move. Without warning, it sent a direct transmission to the Council's command center. The screen flickered and the human face appeared again. This time, however, the human didn't speak. Instead, a simple phrase flashed across the screen in bold letters. We're watching you. The aliens froze, their hearts pounding in their chests. The human warship had somehow tapped into their communication network. It wasn't just a warning, it was a statement of control. They had been observed. They had been tracked. Every movement they made was being watched. The Council felt the weight of the situation like never before. What had seemed like a peaceful first contact was rapidly turning into a high-stakes game. The humans were watching their every move. They had shown that they could track the aliens, understand their technology, and even manipulate the situation to their advantage. Do we communicate again? One of the council members asked nervously. No, the leader replied firmly. Not yet. We gather information first. We need to learn everything we can about this ship, about these humans. We are dealing with something far more dangerous than we ever imagined. The warship remained where it was, floating silently in space. But the longer it stayed, the more the aliens could feel the tension building. The silence between them and the humans was deafening. What would happen if the humans decided to make their next move? Would they attack? Or was this just the beginning of something far more terrifying? The aliens didn't know. But one thing was certain. The galaxy was about to change. And humanity, with its terrifying warship, was at the center of it all. The rising storm. The Alien Council was now in complete disarray. The human warship had done something no one had expected. It had silently watched, analyzed, and then threatened. No shots were fired, no battles were waged. Yet the fear was palpable, thicker than any atmosphere the aliens had encountered. For the first time in their history, they were facing an enemy they couldn't fully comprehend. The galaxy's peace was hanging by a thin thread, and no one knew what the humans would do next. The humans are not what we thought, the council leader murmured, staring at the now silent transmission screen. The humans' message, "We're watching you," had cut through the air like a blade. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. As the council deliberated, their scouts continued to observe the human warship from a safe distance. But something had changed. The warship's movements were now more deliberate. It was no longer just floating, idle in space. The energy emanating from it had increased significantly, and the surrounding space seemed to warp under its influence. The scout ships, which once easily remained hidden, now felt an overwhelming pressure to move away. Something was happening. "I've never felt anything like this," one of the scouts muttered as he scanned the readings from his vessel. "The closer we get, the more alive the warship seems. It's adapting, evolving." Another scout, his voice shaking, responded, "It's like it knows we're here. It's tracking us." The council leader's eyes narrowed, a sense of urgency starting to grip him. The warship had already shown it could track them, read them, and control its technology in ways they couldn't understand. But now, there was something else, something darker. "Have they moved?" the leader asked, his voice heavy. "Yes," the scout responded. "They're on the move now. It's heading straight for us." Panic spread through the council like wildfire. The warship was advancing. This wasn't a simple exploration mission or an attempt to communicate. The humans had clearly made their move, and they were heading straight into the heart of the alien galaxy. We must prepare, the leader said firmly. Send a fleet to intercept. We can't allow them to get any closer. We don't know what they're capable of, but we cannot let them reach our home systems. But even as the order was given, the scouts reported something even more terrifying. The human warship had already calculated their movements. It wasn't just heading toward the alien systems, it was moving with purpose. And in the blink of an eye, it had jumped into hyperdrive. How did they? The council member began, stunned. We didn't even detect the jump. The entire room fell silent as the weight of the realization settled in. The humans weren't just fast. They were unpredictable. They had bypassed the council's entire defensive grid, using technology that the aliens had never seen before. The warship had just made a jump that no one had anticipated, and now it was somewhere in the galaxy, closer than ever, ready to strike when least expected. We've underestimated them, the leader said, his voice tinged with regret. They are not the primitive species we thought them to be. They are playing a game with us, and we don't even know the rules. Suddenly a transmission came through, but this time it was different. It wasn't the usual calm human face or voice, it was something far more chilling. A strange, distorted voice filled the room. You thought you could hide. You thought you could keep us out. Now it's too late. We have already seen your secrets. The voice was cold, without emotion. It sent a chill down the backs of every member of the council. They were no longer dealing with diplomats or explorers. The humans were playing a dangerous game, one that seemed to be more about power and control than peaceful negotiation. What do they mean by secrets? One council member asked, his voice filled with fear. Have they infiltrated our systems? The leader's face grew pale. They've been watching us this entire time. They know our strategies, our weaknesses. They've been studying us just as much as we've been studying them. The room erupted into chaos as the realization hit everyone. The humans had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone had thought. Their warship was just the tip of the iceberg. If they had already accessed the Council's most secure systems, what else did they know? What other surprises did they have waiting? We have to strike first, a desperate voice spoke up, breaking through the panic. We can't wait any longer. If we don't act now, they'll wipe us out before we even have a chance to defend ourselves. Hold, the leader commanded, raising his hand to silence the room. We cannot let fear dictate our actions. We need more information. If we attack without knowing everything, we will fall into their trap. We must be calculated. We must be prepared. But before anyone could respond, the room shook. The walls vibrated, with a low hum, and the entire facility seemed to shudder as if it were being pulled into a massive gravitational force. Impossible, one of the scientists whispered. They found us again. The lights flickered and the entire council room was plunged into darkness. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, the transmission screen flickered back to life. The human face appeared again. Only this time there was something different in its eyes, something predatory. The human spoke softly, almost as if toying with them. We warned you. We gave you the chance to surrender. Now, the game begins. New message flashed on the screen. Your move. The alien council sat in stunned silence as the warship's energy pulsed once more. The humans weren't just testing their strength, they were toying with them. They had already made their move, and the galaxy was holding its breath. The storm was rising, and it was too late to turn back. The trap is set. The silence that followed the humans' chilling words felt like a deep, suffocating void. Your move. The screen flickered and went dark, leaving the alien council in a state of stunned paralysis. There was no more communication, no more threats, just the haunting memory of those words, your move. Every member of the council felt the weight of it. It wasn't just a challenge. It was a declaration of war. The humans were no longer waiting for permission. They had already taken control of the battlefield, and the alien forces were scrambling to catch up. We can't stay passive, the council leader said, his voice more strained than before. We need a counterattack. If we hesitate now, it will be our last mistake. But even as he spoke, something strange began to happen. The communication screens blinked on again, this time showing images of the galaxy, alien systems that had once been secure, now highlighted with bold red lines. It was as though the humans had already mapped the entire region. They knew the location of every fleet, every stronghold, every planet. And worse, they knew the weak spots, those places where the aliens had made their greatest miscalculations. How did they get this information? One of the council members whispered, his voice trembling with fear. The leader didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the map, realizing just how deep the humans had infiltrated. Every fleet, every defense grid, every hidden base, it was all laid bare before them. The humans weren't just watching from the sidelines. They were actively manipulating the very fabric of the war. The game had shifted, and the aliens were playing by the humans' rules now. We have to act now, the leader finally spoke, his voice harsh. They have already struck at our heart. If we wait any longer, they will cripple us. The command was given. A massive fleet was mobilized, ready to launch a full-scale assault against the human warship. The aliens had no idea what kind of weapons the humans were hiding, or what kind of force they could muster. But they knew one thing for sure. The warship had to be stopped. It was the key to everything. The fleet moved swiftly through space, their engines burning hot as they closed in on the human warship's last known location. Every ship was on high alert. They had to be ready for anything. Stay focused, the leader's voice came through the comms, calm but filled with a deep-seated tension. We cannot afford a single mistake. As the fleet neared the coordinates, there was no sign of the human warship. But the aliens were not fooled. The humans were too clever, too unpredictable. This was what they wanted. They wanted the aliens to move in, to make the first mistake. And then, it happened. A massive energy pulse surged from deep within the heart of the galaxy, cutting through the quiet of space like a knife. It wasn't just a blast. It was a pulse so intense, so precise, that it sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. For a split second, the entire fleet was thrown off course, their navigation systems corrupted. Get it together, the fleet commander barked, slamming his fist on the console as his ship rocked violently. But the damage was done. The alien fleet was no longer in control. Another pulse followed, and this time, it hit directly at the heart of the fleet, triggering an explosion of energy that destroyed 2 ships in an instant. The alien fleet was disoriented, panicked, and unable to fight back. Fall back, a voice screamed over the comms, but it was too late. Another pulse, even stronger than the last, ripped through the heart of the fleet. This time, the energy was targeted with surgical precision, taking out weapon systems, shields, and communication lines. Where is the warship? The fleet commander demanded, but there was no answer. No sight of the enemy. Nothing. It was then that the true horror of the situation became apparent. The human warship hadn't been destroyed. It hadn't even fired a single shot. It was simply waiting, watching, playing with them. The leader of the alien council stared at the chaotic transmission of the fleet, trying to make sense of it all. The humans hadn't come to fight directly. They had played the aliens into their own trap. Every move the aliens made had been anticipated, calculated, and countered before they even realized it. We've been outclassed, one of the council members whispered. They're toying with us. The leader's face hardened. He knew they couldn't retreat now. The humans had taken control of the situation. The question was no longer how to stop them. It was how to survive. Reinforcements, the leader ordered. Send everything we have. We cannot let them take us without a fight. But as the fleet sent out their final distress signals, another transmission came through. The image on the screen was blurry at first, but then it cleared, and there, standing tall and calm, was a human officer, unaffected by the chaos. The officer spoke, his voice casual, almost bored. We told you, he said. This was never about a fight. You've already lost. The screen flashed again, and this time a map appeared. The red lines had grown thicker, more aggressive. The warship wasn't alone anymore. It had already sent out dozens of smaller ships, each one infiltrating alien space, slipping through the cracks, destroying communication lines, and sowing panic throughout the galaxy. "You never stood a chance," the human officer continued, his voice growing more ominous. "You've been playing into our hands from the beginning. We've been watching you for longer than you realize. And now, it's time for you to face the consequences." The Alien Council, watching in stunned silence, could only watch as the warship's full power was revealed. Every move they had made, every defense they had put up had been dismantled piece by piece. The trap had been set from the very beginning. And now, it was too late to escape. The storm had arrived, and the aliens were caught in its eye. The darkness. Before the dawn, the Alien Council, now fully aware of the looming disaster, sat in stunned silence. The human warship, its presence dominating their galaxy, was an unstoppable force. Their forces, scattered and in disarray, were being picked off, one by one, their most advanced technology rendered useless by an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. It was clear. The humans were far ahead in this game, and the aliens had underestimated them from the start. "We can't let them do this," the council leader muttered, slamming his fist onto the table. "We cannot let the humans take everything we've built." His words echoed through the room, but no one had an answer. The human warship was still at large, its attacks precise and methodical. It was almost as if it knew the aliens' every move before they made it. The destruction was complete, and yet the humans hadn't even fully engaged. The strategy was clear. They were in control. A high-ranking officer, his face pale from the latest reports, spoke up, his voice trembling. "We've lost contact with our outer colonies. The warship, it's already infiltrated deep into our systems. The fleets are in disarray. We don't have the resources to mount another attack. They've crippled us." The council leader's eyes hardened. "There has to be a way. We cannot let them think they've won. They must feel the weight of our power." But even as he spoke, another transmission came through. This time the screen flashed red. The image was a live feed, showing the once proud alien capital. The bustling cities, once filled with life, were now eerily silent. And hovering above it all, in a high orbit, was the human warship. It was just watching, waiting. "We'll lose everything," another council member said quietly, her voice breaking. "The humans. They will take our home, our culture, everything. This isn't just a defeat. This is extinction." The leader's expression was grim. He had known that the humans were powerful, but he hadn't anticipated this kind of invasion, this complete and utter domination. There were no grand battles, no heroic last stands, just an overwhelming, crushing presence, quietly dissecting their entire civilization. "Maybe we've lost," another member whispered. "But we can't surrender. We fight until the end." The council leader, his face pale with a mix of desperation and determination, took a deep breath. "Prepare the last line of defense. We will fight, with everything we have left. If we fall, at least we will go down with honor." Across the galaxy, the human warship's movements became even more unpredictable. It was no longer simply observing. Now, it was setting traps, sending small vessels that moved like shadows, darting through alien space. They were no longer just following the aliens. They were guiding them, shepherding them into a trap that the aliens didn't even know existed. The humans had learned the galaxy's every secret, and now they were using that knowledge against the alien fleets. Each attack was a subtle manipulation of the enemy's tactics. A false flag here, a misleading signal there. The humans were playing the long game, drawing the aliens in and ensuring they would never see the final strike coming. The alien fleets were in disarray, disjointed, and divided. The chaos was spreading, and there was no central command to unite them. It was as though the aliens had no idea who the true enemy was anymore, and worse, they were losing their will to fight. "Sir," one of the officers said to the council leader, his voice nervous, "we've received new data. The human warship, It's making its move. It's not just waiting anymore. They've set course for our central system. The council leader's eyes narrowed. It's time. The last line of defense, the ultimate weapon, was ready. Hidden away in a remote part of the galaxy, the alien race had created something powerful, something that could, in theory, turn the tide of the war. But it was a weapon unlike any they had ever used before. Its activation was costly, and it was known only to a select few. "Activate it," the leader ordered, the tension in his voice unmistakable. The shipyards began to hum with activity. The final weapon, an enormous device designed to harness the energy of an entire star, was ready. If they could get it into position, it would be powerful enough to destroy even the human warship. It was their last hope. Meanwhile, the human warship watched from afar as calm as ever. The crew, silently working, had already made their own calculations. They had expected this. They knew that the alien race would have one final weapon. They knew that the desperation of the council would lead them to activate it. "We've anticipated this move," the human commander said, standing in front of a massive display screen that showed the alien fleet gathering its forces. "They will try to use their ultimate weapon, but they won't succeed. We've already figured out how to counter it." The human warship had been designed with a single purpose: to outwit, outmaneuver, and overwhelm any enemy. The final weapon the aliens had was a desperate gamble, and the humans had already prepared for it. The warship's crew was ready. The aliens' weapon would soon be launched, and when it did, the humans would make their move. Every piece of the puzzle had already fallen into place. Back in the alien command room, the leader watched in grim silence as their weapon was prepared for launch. It would take time, but it was the only chance they had left. "Hold steady," the leader said, his voice tinged with desperation. "We must be patient. The humans are coming for us, and when they do, we will strike. We will show them the true power of the galaxy." But as the countdown began, the council leader couldn't shake the growing feeling in the pit of his stomach. He had watched the humans closely. He had seen how they moved, how they strategized. They were not making mistakes. They were too precise, too calculating. The more he thought about it, the more it became clear. They weren't just fighting a battle for survival. They were hunting. The weapon was ready, and so were the aliens. But as the seconds ticked down, the leader couldn't help but wonder, was it already too late? The final gambit. The stars above the alien capital began to flicker as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The alien council leader's hands clenched into fists as the final weapon powered up. The hum of energy filled the command room, vibrating through the floor as if the entire galaxy were on the brink of breaking. "Prepare to fire," he ordered, his voice thick with tension. His heart raced, knowing this was the moment of truth. They had nothing left. This weapon, their ultimate creation, was their final chance. If it failed, they would be nothing more than a footnote in galactic history. The human warship was still in orbit, seemingly unaware of the impending doom. Or perhaps they were. Perhaps they knew it was coming. The aliens had never been so uncertain about their enemy. Every plan they had put in place, every strategy they had devised, had been countered, and now they had no choice but to hope that this weapon, designed to harness the very heart of a star's energy, would do the job. The weapon was an enormous device, a massive energy cannon capable of unleashing enough power to wipe out entire fleets. It had taken decades of research, countless resources, and the combined effort of the alien species' finest minds to create it. And yet, standing there in the control room, the council leader could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, firing in 3, 2, 1. The alien council held their collective breath. Then, with a blinding flash, the weapon erupted in a torrent of energy, shooting a beam straight toward the human warship, which had not moved. The beam surged through space with the power of 1,000 suns, a dazzling arc of destruction aimed at the heart of the human ship. The aliens watched in silence, eyes wide, hearts racing. But then the unexpected happened. The human warship, its massive form still, did not explode in a brilliant burst of light. Instead, there was a shift, an almost imperceptible flicker in the fabric of space itself, and the beam was deflected. "Impossible!" the council leader hissed, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. The energy beam, once destined to annihilate everything in its path, had been repelled. Before anyone could speak, the warship's massive cannons powered up. It wasn't just the human warship. No. The entire fleet of smaller human ships hidden in the darkness surged forward, weapons primed. They had been waiting, biding their time, hiding in the shadows of the galaxy, watching the aliens think they had a chance. The alien fleet scanners lit up. The human ships were everywhere, surrounding them, cutting off every escape route. The warship that had once appeared to be a passive observer was now a monstrous predator. They weren't just playing defense anymore, they were hunting. "We've been had," the council officer muttered, fear creeping into his voice. "They've been leading us into a trap." The council leader gritted his teeth. "Prepare for battle. We may not have another chance." But the alien forces were already too late. As the human ships closed in, their weapons fired in perfect synchrony. The alien shields, already battered by previous attacks, were no match for the ferocity of the human firepower. The first alien ship exploded in a fiery burst, its pieces scattering across the empty void of space. One by one, the alien fleet began to disintegrate, their ships torn apart by the human weapons that seemed to cut through them with ease. Panic spread throughout the alien ranks. They had been completely outmatched. The warship wasn't just a weapon, it was a harbinger of their complete and total destruction. On the human warship, the commander's voice echoed through the comms. "All forces engage. Don't let a single ship escape." The human fleet moved in with terrifying precision. The alien ships, once so proud and powerful, were now little more than helpless targets. The human warship unleashed its own energy weapons, the blasts so powerful they tore through shields and armor like paper. Alien ships that had once commanded the stars were now little more than debris, drifting through space. As the battle raged on, the council leader watched in horror as his forces were torn apart. There was no escape. There was no hope. The humans were everywhere, and they had already won. But then, a new signal crackled through the static, cutting through the chaos of the battle. The alien leader's eyes narrowed. It was a transmission, a distress signal from one of their last remaining strongholds. "Commander, the weapon is still operational. We can't lose control of it," a voice from the transmission urged. The alien council leader's mind raced. Could this be the turning point? Could the weapon, the one they had relied on so heavily, still save them? Without a word, he turned to the officer standing beside him. "Divert all remaining forces to the weapons station. We have one final shot." But even as he spoke, he knew it was already too late. The human warship was already en route to the weapons location. There was no escaping it. The human fleet, now in full control, had cut off every avenue of retreat. The alien forces were surrounded, trapped in a deadly game with no way out. The battle was no longer about victory. It was about survival. Back on the human warship, the commander stood with his arms crossed, watching the destruction unfold. There was no joy in his eyes, no sense of victory. This wasn't about revenge or hatred. It was about something far deeper, something the aliens would never understand. "The galaxy is ours," the commander murmured as the final blow was struck. And with that, the alien fleet was no more. The final gambit, the weapon that the aliens had pinned all their hopes on, was nothing but a whisper in the vast emptiness of space. The aliens, once rulers of the galaxy, were now nothing more than a broken race, scattered and shattered. The human warship, still hovering above their shattered world, was a symbol of a new age. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they would never make that mistake again. The fate of the galaxy had shifted, and the humans, having defeated one of the most powerful forces the universe had ever known, had claimed their place among the stars. The silence that followed the destruction was deafening, and then in the distance a single message came through the galaxy's comms, a message of peace, The humans had won. The unforeseen aftermath. The battlefield was eerily quiet. The stars that had once seemed so vast and endless now felt like cold witnesses to the devastation below. What had once been a mighty fleet of alien ships, proud and untouchable, was now nothing but scattered debris drifting through space. A silence followed their destruction, a silence that hung heavy over everything. The human warship, massive and unyielding, hovered above the remains, its guns now silent, its purpose fulfilled. But within the stillness something stirred, something deep, something that no one had anticipated. It was not the end. It was only the beginning. Inside the command room of the human warship, Commander Roderick stood with his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the view screen. His expression was unreadable, though in his mind the questions continued to churn. They had won, yes. The alien fleet had been decimated. But at what cost? The alien forces had been relentless, powerful beyond measure, and now humanity had proven it could stand against them. But the commander knew this victory was not as simple as it seemed. There was still a lurking question that gnawed at him. What if this wasn't the last time they faced the aliens? He turned toward his second-in-command, Lieutenant Della, who was studying her console with a furrowed brow. "Have we gotten any word from the other ships?" he asked, his voice low but firm. "No, sir." "Nothing from the fleet's rear guard," she replied, her fingers flying across the screen. "But I am detecting something unusual, a signal. It's faint, almost hidden." The commander's eyes sharpened. "A distress signal?" "Not exactly, sir. More like a transmission from a deep space anomaly. It's not something we can trace easily." Lieutenant Della's voice was tinged with uncertainty. "It's coming from a place near the galactic core, a region that hasn't been explored much." Roderick's jaw clenched. Could it be another alien force, one that hasn't been discovered yet? Della didn't reply right away. She was still analyzing the data, trying to decode the signal. Her face grew pale as she processed the information. It's not another fleet. Sir, this is a message, a warning." The room seemed to grow colder as the commander's eyes widened. "A warning?" he repeated, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Yes. I'm not sure how, but it's encoded in a frequency we haven't seen before. But it's unmistakable. It's clear." She paused, looking up at the commander, her face tense. "This message, it's from the aliens. And it's not a threat." Roderick raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" "The message says they are coming, the ones who created us, the ones who will destroy everything." A heavy silence fell over the command room. The implications of those words settled like a stone in their stomachs. "The ones who created us?" Roderick echoed. His mind raced. Could there be something more powerful than the aliens they had just defeated? Something even more terrifying than the force they had already faced? Della continued, reading from the transmission. "It also says, you may have won the war, but you have only just begun to understand the true enemy. We are pawns, and your victory has made you a target." Roderick turned away from the screen, his mind grappling with the enormity of what was unfolding. This wasn't just about defeating one alien race, no. This was about something much larger, something that no one had expected, not even the humans. The victory had merely opened the door to something more dangerous, something that might destroy not just them, but the entire galaxy. "We need to know more," Roderick said, his voice low and determined. "Contact every fleet, every ship. Get a full readout on that transmission. We need to understand who or what these creators are. But Commander, if these creators are as dangerous as this transmission suggests," Della began, her voice quivering. "I know," Roderick interrupted, "but if we don't act now, we risk being caught unprepared. We don't know how long we have before they arrive, but we can't afford to sit idle." The atmosphere was heavy with uncertainty. The victory over the alien fleet had felt sweet, but now it tasted like ash in their mouths. They had learned something in this battle. There was always something worse lurking in the unknown, something far beyond what they could imagine. and humanity, in its victory, had awakened the next threat. The transmission flickered on the screen, once more offering the last cryptic message. The war is over for now, but remember, some wars are eternal, and the true battle has only just begun. The room fell silent again, as the weight of those words hit everyone. The galaxy was at peace. For now. But peace had always been fragile, and now it seemed the true war was just on the horizon. The war against the creators of the aliens, against a force so powerful and ancient that even the aliens they had defeated were nothing but shadows of its might. Roderick walked up to the large viewing window, his eyes scanning the empty expanse of space. The human fleet had just secured their victory, but in that victory they had made an unsettling discovery. The galaxy was not safe, not by a long shot. And as the commander stared into the infinite blackness, a realization crept over him. The fight they had just won had been nothing more than a prelude to a much darker, more complex struggle. Wide, human race had taken its first step into a larger universe, a universe filled with dangers they could not yet comprehend. The true challenge lay ahead, and the question now was whether humanity had the strength to face it. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the human fleet prepared to depart, a dark silhouette appeared in the corner of the galaxy. The galaxy, once a vast and unexplored space, now seemed a little smaller, and the war was far from finished. "Oh, Minnie,"